It was the first time these sides had met since an extra-time grand final thriller last season that was won by South, and there was little love lost. Just back from the Australian Under-18 Championships, Sean O'Brien was having a big game in front of goal for North. There was desperation in everything Norths did, including their opening goal. It didn't look pretty, but Richard Campbell's finish was effective. Nathan Wilkinson's tap-in soon after made it 2-0 at the break before the team scored a 4-goal win. Cessnock's Golden Boy boxer Jamie Crampton has secured an Australian title bout in his hometown for July. The 27-year-old, who's been beaten just once in 20 pro bouts, will fight Nigerian Olympian Solomon Egamine for the national welterweight belt. Younger brother Ben, meanwhile, will contest the vacant state middleweight title also on July 11. Newcastle will play Northern Division in round 2 of the Country Rugby League Championship in Tamworth on Saturday. Newcastle progressed on the back of a Trent Sorkeld-inspired 40 points to 14 win, the West's fullback scoring a treble. 8 unanswered goals either side of the first quarter break set Newcastle City up for a big win in the Black Diamond AFL. Warners Bay surprised the Hawks by 26 points, while the Marlins' return to form saw them account for Gosford. And Birrong, Mount Lewis, St John's Park and Harbord will do battle for the Premier League Lawn Bowls title at Charlestown this weekend.
Joanne Fisher heads up a task force which has examined the needs of hospitals in the Greater Sydney metropolitan area, taking in the Lower Hunter. Reporting back to local health council members today, she told of how nearly $7 million in additional recurrent funding has been spent, the priorities decided by those at the coalface.
The decisions were made by clinicians determining exactly where the money should go, what services should be provided and where they should be located.
Money has been spread across Lower Hunter hospitals and a range of services boosted, with cardiac, gynecological cancer, stroke and trauma services receiving the lion's share of funding. A similar body is being established to look at the needs of rural areas. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
As the country team got together for the first time, Matthew Gidley was cooling his heels with what remained of the Knights team. His selection omission hard to swallow given his man-of-the-match performance against Souths, and his replacement, Sean Timmins, is pencilled in for the pack come State of Origin.
There's no use spinning the dummy out, you must just keep working hard, as I said before, and if injuries pop up and if there's poor performances in the early games, I've played there before, so they know what I'm capable of.
It didn't quite wash with his captain.
Yeah, I'm probably a bit biased, but I think he's a great player.
In all, 6 Knights are in the country team, with Danny Badiris, Josh Perry included, along with Tamana Tahu, while after his recent run of injuries, Ben Kennedy was able to give his own assessment at the medical. They'll be welcome faces for debutant Daniel Abraham, who won his first country cap.
A sort of personal goal I had at the start of the year to try and make a rep side, and to achieve that, I guess, is definitely satisfying.
Anthony Quinn's return match for Newcastle, more than that, scoring 3 tries. Matt Parsons, meanwhile, will undergo back surgery this week and will be out for up to 3 months. Souths forward Ashley Harrison will miss 1 week for this high shot on Ben Kennedy. But it's unlikely anything more will come of this face rake. A similar incident cost Josh Perry 1 game off last week. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Amid all the talk of changes to student fees, loans and research grants, Newcastle University mainly hopes the budget provides for improved funding arrangements and 100 extra places at both its Callaghan and Central Coast campuses.
We're looking particularly at additional places for our medical students, additional places for nurses and for teachers, but we'd also like to get additional places for other students.
The Vice-Chancellor, though, is among those who'd be concerned by a hike in HECS fees.
But I think there will be an opportunity for us to look at the fee arrangements for our various degree programs and hopefully adapt the level of those fees to the needs of students.
Those behind the upgrade of Energy Australia Stadium will also be watching tonight's budget with interest. $22 million is still needed to upgrade the Western Grandstand and Hill areas, but the ISC Trust doesn't expect a direct mention. Instead, the funds might be included as part of a community sports package.
If that's there, well then we'll be knocking on their door to find out if we're included and if so, how we're included.
Whatever comes our way, I think we should appreciate, we will appreciate, and we'll spend it to best advantage.
And transport projects and programs again figure heavily on the Hunter's wish list. The F3 freeway extension from Seahampton to Branxton weighing in at $335 million. Lake Macquarie Council, meanwhile, is hoping for $5 million for the proposed rail and road hub to be set up near the Glendale Supercentre.
Newcastle's track record in hosting large sporting events is exemplary, and its success last year with the Eastern Australian University Games definitely helped sway judges when deciding where to hold the national version.
It's actually probably set up a model to be followed by a number of other cities who've taken notice of that selection and decided that that's what they'll try and do with their regional contribution to show that they can do it.
The event was officially launched today with local athletes featuring on the poster. Rugby union and touch footy player Toby McGann set to be pinned up in universities around the country.
My friends will probably give you a bit of a jeer about it, but no, it's good to get exposure for the games. The more people that turn up for it, it'll make it a better competition.
For 6 days in late September, early October, around 5,000 competitors, 400 volunteers from 47 different universities will compete in more than 20 sports. That's expected to directly inject $4.5 million into the local economy during the week of competition, while flow-on effects will take that figure up to around $10 million.
Some residents of Narara, north of Gosford, awoke to a waterfront vista this morning. The flood came from overnight rain and a sunrise deluge which dumped 105 millimetres in less than 12 hours. Narara Valley High had to be evacuated after access to the school was blocked by flooding. The rain came from a weather system sitting off the Newcastle coast that stretched south to Sydney. For Newcastle University researcher Dr Stuart Franks, who predicted significant rain to begin in April, the continuation of the wet is further confirmation the El Niño phenomena is over.
That doesn't guarantee drought-busting rains, but what it does do is it means we are back to the more normal rainfalls.
Even though the lower Hunter has been wet, the Hunter Valley has only recorded falls of between 50 and 100 millimetres since the rain began. However, farmers are being urged to remain optimistic that the wet weather will eventually reach them.
Fingers crossed, we'll be back to normal conditions certainly by next summer.
And if the clouds head west, there could be rain with moderate to heavy falls across the Hunter until Saturday. Gary Blair, NBN News. Ashton Coal, which holds the lease mine by Nardell Coal Corporation, has been asked to explain why the government shouldn't take control of the resource if mining stopped without ministerial approval. It's the latest move to get $10 million owed to Hunter firms by the Macquarie Bank-controlled Nardell Coal. Meanwhile, the closure is set to be the subject of a Supreme Court investigation.
This is one young man who can handle the heat in the kitchen. Last month, Guy Parkinson was working in somewhat of a pressure cooker during a national competition. Under strict time constraints, he had to prepare a 3-course meal to be taste tested. And his efforts paid off. Guy won gold in the third-year apprentice category. That gave him a 1 in 4 chance to win a car. And fortunately, he was given the right key to unlock it. But despite beating more than 200 other apprentices to get to the final 4, Guy, who's from Tamworth, remains modest about his success.
The car was just pure luck. Just picked the key out of a hat, so that was just very lucky.
The competition was organised by the Hospitality Training Network to promote the industry, which is experiencing a national shortage. Currently, some 2,000 commercial cooks are needed. Meanwhile, many may be wondering whether Guy's talent in the kitchen is also proving useful in impressing the opposite sex.
Not as yet.
Do you think it will in the future?
I hope so. Yeah, always hopeful.
Lyndall Derrig, NBN News.
"61-year-old Father James Fletcher has been a priest for 35 years. A well-known member of the Catholic Diocese of Maitland-Newcastle, he was charged yesterday with child sex offences and appeared in Maitland Local Court on 7 counts of sexual assault on a person under 16 and 1 count of indecent assault. The court ordered that no details be published which could identify the complainant or the place and time the alleged offences occurred, other than to say they were not recent. In line with church procedure for dealing with child sex claims, Father Fletcher has been removed from active church duties while the charges are heard. The church has expressed its concern and support for those involved, Bishop Michael Malone saying it's a difficult time for all connected to the accused priest.
The community to which he belonged is likewise suffering from the shock of it. And all of us who are colleagues of the priest, the other priests in the diocese, we feel it also.
Father Fletcher has strongly denied the allegations and has been granted conditional bail to face court again in Newcastle on Friday week. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Training with the Hunters ABA team last night, it seems that's the only Newcastle side that will boast Ben Melmoth this season. Off contract to the championship-winning Sydney Kings, the centre hoped to take to the court for the city's new NBL team, but a deal just couldn't be done.
It's broken my heart. Newcastle's always on I wore my heart and my soul on my sleeve when I was playing for Newcastle, but unfortunately the owners are going in a different direction, and I'm off looking somewhere else. So we'll see what happens.
The Hunter side's Butch Hayes says it would have been good to have had Melmoth, and the recruiting process goes on. The man himself, meanwhile, will now look elsewhere, whether in Australia or even overseas. The news at Newcastle United's last training session for the week matched the weather perfectly, with Josh Mitchell and Milan Blagojevich ruled out, Blagojevich possibly facing an arthroscope on his injured knee. Travis Dodd, however, hit the park for the first time since copping a broken nose against Olympic.
Hopefully if all goes well tonight and I don't get hit in the face or anything, I can't see why I won't be fit.
The team takes on the Northern Spirit tomorrow night.
Packages of amphetamines, ecstasy, cannabis and even prescription drugs, the haul from yesterday's police raid. Officers from the Newcastle Target Action Group swooped on a house in Fleming Street, Wickham, allegedly uncovering the drugs and around $25,000 in cash. It's the latest in a series of recent hunter busts and police say puts a significant dent into the local drugs trade. A 36-year-old woman has been charged over the haul and has been released on bail to face court next month. Meantime, there was another major police operation late yesterday afternoon when a man barricaded himself inside a home in High Street, Waratah. Officers arrived in numbers and blocked off the street, with reports the 34-year-old was armed with a rifle and was threatening to shoot himself. After a 2-hour standoff, the man surrendered and was arrested without incident. He's been charged with 5 firearm offences. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Maitland Showground has been home to harness racing since 1927, but if a plan by Harness Racing New South Wales goes ahead, that could all end. Under a statewide economic rationalisation program, the governing body wants to merge Maitland with the Newcastle Harness Club.
I know for a fact that many people are going to give the game away if they close this track, and it's just no good for the industry as a whole at all.
Under the merger, the Maitland track would stay open for training, but the area's 70 owner trainers fear not for long.
There's just been $250,000 on the track, and say they'll keep it as a training complex. I think that's a lot of rubbish.
The Maitland track is home to one of the state's biggest races, the Intercity Pace. It's also been a venue for maiden pacers to begin their career. Darren Elder has up to 20 horses and says it will be race over if he's forced to fork out to travel to Newcastle. He's also concerned about a wider impact on Maitland's economy.
If people go out of the game, they don't buy their horse feed, and when they race at Maitland, they get their fuel up here at the mobile garage and stop at the corner shop.
Harness Racing New South Wales was not available for comment today. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
For 10 years, Kathleen Folby created a web of deceit to cover her unimaginable crimes. For the first time, we can show her tearfully maintaining her lies in this police interview.
Did you kill Caleb?
No.
Did you kill Patrick?
No.
Did you try to kill Patrick on that near-miss episode?
No.
Did you kill Sarah?
No.
Did you kill Laura?
No.
The interview was conducted 4 months after the death of her last child, Laura. Seen here in a swimming pool the day before she was killed, the same fate as her 2 brothers and sister. This was Folbig's 000 call for help after she claimed to have found Laura dead.
My baby's not breathing. Not getting any heartbeat or anything. Pardon? I'm actually already. Okay.
Folbig wrote her deepest, darkest thoughts in these diaries. She followed the murderous path of her father, who killed her mother when she was just a toddler. At age 3, she joined a foster family. Lee says she first saw her foster sister's flashes of anger after Laura was born.
Kathy with the rage is another Kathy. But the Kathy that everybody has seen with the sad face in the newspapers and that's not the real Kathy. That's an act.
The jury's verdict clearly a relief.
Kathy knew exactly what she did, and she knew exactly at the time what she was doing.
Look at that! Look! Another one, look! Hey, look at that! Hey. How do you do that?
Just 2 months ago, Wade Crichton was down and out and had nowhere to go. But thanks to the salvos, things have changed.
A bit of relief to get a place to live because I was homeless there for about 3 or 4 months. So it really helped me out. It's starting to get me back on my feet.
Wade is one of 21 men who call the old Glasgow Arms Hotel at Carrington home. The salvos took over the building 10 years ago and allow men to stay for up to 3 months.
They come in here for help, and we try to help them in their particular needs and get them in the rehab if we can, and to get their lives turned around.
The hostel costs $500,000 a year to run and is continually full.
This is the only crisis accommodation from Hornsby to Brisbane, and that just tells your story in itself that this place is continually sought after by guys who have nowhere to go.
This weekend, the Salvation Army hopes to raise $560,000 in the Hunter as part of its $53 million national target.
Well, I'll be out there collecting, so I hope they give me a few donations while I'm out there.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Against his old club, Shane Price never looks to make new friends in his old hometown, while Perth didn't think much of Condiomus's call, which denied them the opening goal. But that was to be one of few chances for Perth as Newcastle chased glory of their own in the last game of the season. In their final game at United, captain Matt Bingley and Adam Hughes combined to make sure it would end on a high note. Fancy footwork almost had Hughes a double before half-time, but he was ruled offside. No doubts over what stopped Ryan Griffith's shot after the break. In his last match, Andy Roberts got some game time, while Joel Griffiths showed glimpses of why he'll be in the Swiss National League next season. The 1-0 win proving a fitting farewell for a number of United players, who now move on.
We all felt as a group that we had a real sniff at it this year.
It's a chance for them to be recognised by clubs, particularly the NRL clubs, and gain selection in the New South Wales side and possibly Australian schoolboy selection.
For Professor Leonie Ashman and her team, the how and why of cancer cell growth and migration through the body is an all-consuming challenge. Originally from Adelaide, Professor Ashman was attracted to Newcastle University, where she heads the Experimental Oncology Unit. Her team's current research a spin-off from identifying a new molecule on leukemia cells.
We couldn't resist going on studying it, and this has really led us into studying solid tumours much more, because it appears now that this protein's a really, really important regulator of cell migration, cancer cell migration, that there's actually more of it present on highly invasive cancer cells.
As so often happens in medical research, the knowledge gained led the team in a new direction, the ultimate goal developing drugs to target specific cancer cells. But there are no shortcuts in the exploration of the unknown, like why a molecule can switch cell growth on and off to create new blood cells, and then suddenly get the switch stuck on, creating uncontrolled cancer cell growth.
Once we understand what makes them different, what makes them behaving badly, that usually opens up opportunities for us to specifically target it. But it does require a very deep understanding of the nature of that molecule and how it's involved in the cancer process for us to be able to develop these targeted drugs.
The fire of curiosity burning within researchers is what keeps them going. They know that even if they achieve a breakthrough, it can be many years before there are tangible results. Tomorrow night, how vampire bats may help stroke victims.
I mean, I have faith in you.
Well, much has been said about Sunday's game between the Knights and the Broncos at the new Suncourt Stadium, which is now probably the world's #1 rugby league ground. One thing's for sure, I'll never tip against the boys, but I've got to say this will be their biggest challenge of the year, if you know what I mean. But also on another different angle, on Saturday night, there's another game without all the hype that game has, which puts together two teams who have crossed probably the toughest roads so far this year to try and forge a victory out of so many close games and wasted opportunities. Parramatta and South are last and second last respectively, and last week's results were typical of the season that they're both having. Parramatta went down just 10 points to 12 against the Storm. The game was going for extra time when Lee Hopkins gave away a penalty for a play-the-ball infringement. The Storm kicked the goal and won the match. Now, Parramatta have been so close. The week before, they lost to Manly in the NRL's first golden point extra time, 34 points to 16. And the week before that, in round 9, they lost to the Warriors 18 points to 16 also. Now, likewise, the Rabbitohs, they've been in a position to win most games this year. Last week, a controversial disallowed try in the 73rd minute, which the video referee couldn't make a decision on, cost the Rabbitohs a game, again 18 points to 16 to the Dragons. Now, this all paints a picture that both teams are going to be desperate to win, but unfortunately, only one can break the drought. I'm going to tip the Eels on that one. Now, on to round 12 for tonight's game. I'm tipping the Raiders on Saturday, the Bulldogs, Eels and Panthers to win. On Sunday, come on the Knights, they're going to win that one, Dragons and the Storm. Good luck for the tips. I'll see you next week.
This is the land at Nelson Bay that locals want protected. At the start of the First World War, the federal government took over the 97-hectare parcel of land to use as a military training camp. Now the Defence Department has no further use for it. It's been offered to the highest bidding developer to build a housing estate. 200 people turned out today to tell the federal government that's not on.
The people want this piece of land kept in public ownership. They don't want it sold off to developers.
The Bay's federal member Bob Baldwin has promised to fight for Gan, even signing the protesters' petition.
Well, there is no doubting that Gan is a pristine piece of the environment, and I fully agree that the area should be set aside as a national park. I don't want to see it be developed.
Some claim the federal government is simply seeing what it can get away with.
I think maybe they just do ambient actions and see what sort of response they get.
I will push that in Canberra this week and we will see what outcome we can get.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
With a long injury list, West found themselves missing almost an entire pack of forwards. After 20 minutes, they were also down 18-0. Chasing points, things didn't help when desperate defence. And the sideline denied them 2 tries in the same corner. The first half, though, belonged to the Carmont brothers. Already with a try each, the pair combined again just before the break, with George setting up Stu as the Torres headed to the sheds, up 22 points to 8. West began the second the way it wanted to have started the first. When leading try scorer Garth Ross raced the length of the field for yet another this season, the Rosellas had clawed back within 6. They left a mark in defence too. But there was little you could do to stop this. Fullback Luke Gibson flying high to take a Jamie Batty bomb and improve the Magpies' buffer once more. The Rosellas went down fighting, but in a points decision, Torres had 14 too many at the final bell. And the 6 Newcastle players selected for country rep duty will join the squad in camp on June 15 to prepare for the match against Queensland. Newcastle skipper Ben Donaldson, a notable omission.
Vampire bats might be the stuff of horror movies, but they really do exist in Amazonian jungles, biting animals and feeding on their blood. Now scientists have been able to reproduce the powerful anti-clotting agent the bats use, and the Hunter Medical Research Institute is taking part in an international study to see if that agent can dissolve clots lodged in the brains of stroke victims. While stroke is now rivalling cancer as the second greatest cause of death, leading researcher Dr. Chris Levi says progress is being made.
So many challenges that come out of every finding and every discovery.
Strokes are most frequently caused by clots blocking blood vessels in the brain, but our bodies form clots all the time. The research challenge is to find out why, for some people, those clots become life-threatening.
We're now getting a handle on the genetics of that, and we've begun a project here where we're looking at what are the genetic elements that might predispose people to blood clot formation in stroke, and we're now recruiting patients in that, and that's going to be a very important study. And it's one of the only studies at the moment in Australia that's looking at this issue.
In our researchers series tomorrow night, Science in Reverse, how a study of humans might also bring benefits for animals. The wonder of new life has fascinated scientists for centuries, but ironically it seems half the process has not been given much attention.
We know very little about how the male reproductive system works. We really have very little insight into the causes of male infertility.
After many years of research and teaching at Edinburgh University, Professor Aitken is now Head of Biological Sciences at Newcastle University. His internationally recognised work instrumental in attracting a $9 million federal grant to focus on the male reproductive system.
1 in 20 Australian males will consult for infertility, and the tragedy of that situation is we really have no understanding why they are infertile. And then the other side of the coin is trying to develop reversible male methods of fertility control.
The search for answers for the human species often involves animals. Here, fast-moving wallaby sperm are put under the microscope. But animals may also benefit from this project. One target is the non-surgical sterilisation of domestic animals.
So instead of taking your cat or your dog to be surgically castrated by the vet just gives them a simple injection and they are sterilised. That's a market worth billions of dollars in the US alone.
Tomorrow night, a tiny fish, a deep-sea light source and a mystery molecule, all part of cancer research. To hear the familiarity with which researchers talk about molecules, it's easy to forget the micronic nature of their studies. A single cell can have 100,000 molecules.
We all do, we dream about our molecules.
For Professor Gordon Burns, head of the NBN Telethon Cancer Research Unit at Newcastle University, it's the behaviour of one particular molecule that he desperately wants to understand.
Curiosity, trying to understand the molecule. Molecules are complex, nobody really knows how they're able to do what they do. And every little piece of extra knowledge sparks to renewed interest to discover something new.
For over 20 years at both Cambridge University and Newcastle, Professor Burns has led a study of a molecule present in many breast cancers. Using enormously powerful microscopes, cells of tiny zebrafish, sometimes tracked by attaching the luminescence of deep-sea jelly blubbers, the molecule's traced as it permeates the membrane of a cell. Now, a major discovery by Professor Burns' team of another molecule, CD36, and its partnership to the commonly present molecule in cancers has become the focus of intense research.
You're constantly thinking about it, and my wife says sometimes, snap out of it, and what are you thinking of now? But she knows what I'm thinking of, usually CD36.
Tomorrow night, in the last of our series on the researchers, how dizzy spells may one day be corrected by electronics.
Col Hode has been part of the oyster industry for nearly 30 years, but he fears for the future.
People aren't going to eat oysters if they can't get oysters. And it's getting that way now in our industry that we can't supply all the time.
But it's not a new problem. In fact, the New South Wales industry's decline has been painfully drawn out, from peak production of around 145,000 bags in the mid-70s to just 50,000 bags in the year 2000. There are many theories on why: water quality issues and the competing demands of water users among farmers' top concerns.
We've got a lot of problems with the government departments. We don't know which way we're going.
Now, an independent review by the Healthy Rivers Commission has cast a new focus on the oyster industry. It's examined a raft of issues affecting estuaries throughout New South Wales. The Commission has made a list of recommendations to go to government to try and turn the tide on the industry decline. Among them, better land and water management and greater accountability for decision-making within government departments. Farmers hope authorities will take notice.
If we don't look after our waterways, we won't have oysters in the next few years. I can see that happening.
Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Parkville Piggery north of Scone has become a high-profile casualty of the drought. Low prices for pigs and high grain prices forced the piggery's parent company, Illenium, one of Australia's major pork producers, into voluntary administration. While it's still business as usual at Parkville, Illenium is being wound up and the farm is for sale. What happens to a significant contributor to Scone's economy is now being closely watched by the local Chamber of Commerce.
A town like Scone cannot afford to let a business that employs 30 people, rough numbers, injects, say, $1 million worth of wages into the local community. Scone can't afford to let it go.
Parkville Piggery has been in business for over 30 years. Liquidators Prentice Parbury Barilla say they aim to sell the recently refurbished 22,000 head operation as a going concern. The Illenium piggeries, including Parkville, have already attracted widespread interest from existing Australian industry players and companies already associated with the pork industry. There's also the prospect of overseas bids, with the operations being marketed in Asia. Bids close later in the month, with Parkville's future expected to be known in July. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Round 12 is shaping up to be an impressive weekend of football, despite the fact there's only 6 games compared to the normal 7. A dispensation was given to the Knights, Broncos and the Dragons because they have so many players in the respective Origin teams. But this weekend we're seeing another example of a game that 12 months ago wouldn't rate a mention, but this year it's a different story. The Cowboys, they take on the Panthers at Dairy Farmers Stadium, and it's one of the better games of the week, and it's also a tough one to pick. The Cowboys have won 4 out of their last 5 games, and their veteran winger, Matt Singh, well, he's in the best form of his career, having scored 14 tries. Likewise, the Penrith Panthers, they've won a club record straight 7 games in a row, and their fullback, Reece Wesser, he leads the NRL try-scoring list along with Matt Singh on 14. Now, it's a credit to both coaches of what they've achieved so far this season, and it truly is a vital sign that this year the competition, well, it's back to its best. A quick note on the New South Wales team picked for next Wednesday. I think, look, it's a great team. Craig Gower can consider himself pretty unlucky because Craig Wing has been in such sensational form. He's pretty well got his spot on the bench. And debutant Phil Bailey also made it onto the bench. And I believe it's a bit of a master stroke for New South Wales. He's very strong, got tremendous feet late at the line, and he's been in devastating form in the centres for Cronulla, and he's just as much at home in the second row. So he's one to watch. Here's my tips for round 12. Bulldogs, Warriors, Raiders and the Panthers to win. And on Sunday, I've gone with the Storm and the Sea Eagles. Good luck for your tips. I'll see you next week.
This stretch into the Mount Royal area is Singleton's newest road. Mount Royal Road and Castles Road were previously state government-owned Crown roads. While councillors known it could one day become responsible for them, the handover in the days after the March state election came as a shock.
We never in our wildest dreams imagined they were going to do it arbitrarily with a stroke of a pen.
Castles Road provides a shortcut between the ends of Mount Royal Road, and local rural fire service members say the condition of the road is a big worry.
One vehicle gets stuck, one of the heavy tankers gets stuck in the ruts, everything's banked up, you can't escape, the fire keeps coming, it could be a terrible crisis.
To give the area's 38 landholders Singleton Council's minimum standard road would cost an estimated $2 million. The state government may be unable to avoid paying for an upgrade of this road. Federal Local Government Minister Wilson Tuckey says the Carr government has breached the national competition policy by not using revenue from logging in the area to do the work before Singleton Council was made responsible for its future management. Mayor Harvison now hopes talks held this week with Local Government Minister Tony Kelly will bring council a step closer to the money needed for the work. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Former Penrith Panther star Steve Carter began his footballing career at Wyong, and now the NRL veteran looks set to finish his playing days as a Roo. It didn't take long for his side to race in first points against West. Winger Kevin Turkington showing pace and poise to set up Brent Murray. West's Craig Wise had some smart moves as well, sending Wayne March charging over in a swift reply. Chris Schneider didn't see country rep Dave Lawton coming, while Clary Moran snuck up on everyone, stealing a Troy Pizzette pass to race 80 metres and hand the home side a 12-6 lead. West continued to head in the right direction, with Troy right sending Ben Hopper try-bound on the stroke of half-time. The second half was all West, scoring 3 tries to 1, the last a country fullback Trent saw killed as the scoreline blew out 34-10. It got no better for Wyong, with the Northern Blues now joining them in 5th place on the ladder after they upset Lakes United 23-10. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Surrounded by the rolling Tuscan hills, Stoner only had eyes for the technical but fast Mugello track. Starting from pole after lowering the qualifying record time, Stoner blasted out of the blocks. It didn't last the first lap, as a number of riders jostled in what would be a real dogfight for the entire 20-lap race. Stoner's boss, Lucio Cecchinello, shooting to the front. As others fell away, the fight for first continued. There was little room to move up front, as the lead changed several times. Dropping back as far as 8th at one point, Stoner got his nose back in front. But tactics were the telling point, and at almost double his young charger's age, Cecchinello was able to counter any challenge. Just after clocking a new lap record time, there was disaster for Stoner with the finish line in sight. German Stephen Jankner took out Stoner's rear wheel and race, but after 9 attempts, Cecchinello finally won his home Grand Prix.
He's an old hat when it comes to performing in front of crowds, and last night Johnny Chester brought out a few of his multi-golden guitar award-winning tricks in Tamworth. Also featured in the CMAA Country Roundup showcase, one of Australia's newest and most promising young talents, Gemma Doyle from southeast Queensland. It was the perfect farewell to the blossoming Hats Off Festival, which has just celebrated its 4th birthday. Celebrations continued in town today as 11 performers graduated from the CMAA's first ever postgraduate country music course.
A lot of people come through Tamworth looking for that, so here's another chance for them to catch up with country music.
I think we just need to concentrate on the elements that we've already put in place, like the heritage shows, the college reunion shows, and then the big feature concert, and keep working off those, and the rest should grow around it.
Travelling south through Karua was slow going late this afternoon, cars bumper to bumper at the bottleneck. It was a different story heading onto the F3 at Beresfield though, with traffic moving in a smooth and constant stream. The police were doing their bit to keep drivers from speeding, the double demerit points proving a major deterrent. Volunteers from various community groups have been manning the nearby Driver Reviver station, ensuring weary travellers get a cuppa and a snack.
We've actually had people stop today that said they've driven past before and they've stopped for the first time, but they're definitely going to stop again, so that made it all worthwhile.
The Driver Reviver stations will be operating until midnight tonight for those returning home late from their long weekends.
Day one was called off when there was barely a ripple at Redhead, but by today conditions had grown with consistent 1/2 to 1 metre waves rolling in. It suited Dudley's Rob Mitchell, who won the over 40s. In the Opens, Gold Coast's Ryan Gray was being chased down by Redhead's Michael Boddy on his home break. Christian McCall, however, had made this competition his own in recent years, with the Catherine Hill Bay board rider aiming for 5 straight titles. But clubmate Justin Lee, who won the first ever Classic in 1994, got the judge's nod. On the Central Coast this long weekend, around 1,200 netballers have been battling it out in the state championships, a competition traditionally dominated by Sydney clubs. Charlestown under-19s were the ones to beat in their division. In the 20 games they played over 3 days, Charlestown was beaten just twice, not enough to stop them from winning the state title. In Black Diamond AFL, Cardiff Hawks rocked the competition leaders Newcastle City with an impressive 37-point win. Big wins for Warners Bay and Terrigal-Avoca, with point-scoring machine Maurice Goolagong booting 10 goals in the Panthers' hammering of Killarney Vale. And Redhead triathlete Boyd Conrick continues to do well overseas, finishing 6th in a field of more than 1,300 at the long-distance Carlsberg event in Southern California.
At least twice a week, the old Hexham Bridge grumbles and groans as traffic is stopped and part of its span is raised to allow the Lady Joy to pass on its cruises to Morpeth and Raymond Terrace. But since a truck carrying an excavator crashed into the overhead beams of the bridge in April, damaging the lifting mechanism, the Lady Joy has been unable to pass.
Basically, it's taken out every cruise north of the bridge that we do, and in monetary terms, we've lost over $30,000 since it's happened.
The boat catered for 50 passengers on Newcastle Harbour today, but Kevin says it's his river cruises that are the most popular and are booked out months in advance.
By every one that you turn away, it only damages our name and the reputation of tourism in the Hunter, so it's got a flow-on effect.
The RTA told us today that they will repair the lift span, but it'll take at least a year because work will have to be carried out at night. Kevin knows he's only a small fish up against a large government body and hopes he'll still be in business when the repairs are finally made. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
There's a lot Adam McDougall wants to say, but not on camera. Only weeks after having his contract cut, leaving him a free agent at the season's end, he was today picked to play for Newcastle. However, he's opting to stay quiet until he has a game under his belt. As for the club, they say there's no bad blood.
From the football team's point of view, we're more than welcome to have him back, and you have a player of that calibre in the football team, it's only a positive.
Should all the Knights Blues players pull through Origin 1, McDougall will join a backline that shapes as the one they've wanted all season. Kurt Gidley will continue at 5/8, with Sean Rudder covering for the injured Steve Simpson in the back row.
We'd be more than happy with that backline every week if we could.
Gidley agrees. At risk of never shaking off the utility tag, he's looking forward to staying in the number 6 for good.
I'd like to settle down sort of in my position, so hopefully this is it.
Good news for Adam Woolnough after missing 7 weeks. He was given a medical clearance today, but still nursing bruised kidneys, Steve Simpson wasn't considered.
Definitely no chance. We haven't even contemplated him.
And so long as he backs up from Origin, Friday night's match will also be Matt Gidley's 150th for the club. Jim Callanan, NBN News.